Welcome, and thank you so much for applying for this position. We have about 7 questions to ask, and so we will get started with the first one. What motivated you to apply for this vacancy on the board of directors, and what is something you would like us to remember about you as we consider you for this position?
Absolutely. This is my second time applying. I applied last year, especially with the recommendation of Craig Moore, who came off last year. Saw the application or notification again this year. And I think even more of an interest, not just from a friend saying, hey, I think you and your experience in the community would be a great fit. But even more now that I'm serving in helping with the launching of the Black Men's Health Clinic in the East Austin area, social determinants regarding especially this space is an area that we are looking at, seeking and supporting for all men of color. And for me, it's being more knowledgeable in having a better understanding of not just the resources that are currently in the community to make sure we're connecting them to established resources that are funded through tax dollars, but also to take the knowledge and the insight that I'm gaining from the different spaces that I'm operating in to make sure that those same organizations are really being able to get that information, understanding of the needs on the ground to really ensure that the funding, the programs, and services are being as maximized as possible.
Thank you. What specific expertise would you bring to a leadership position on the Sobering Center Board of Directors? How would you leverage those skills to advance the long-term vision of the Sobering Center?
Operated in multiple different aspects with the other healthcare centers, Seton, integral care, community care, a lot of the others, especially with my role as mayor. And I believe the ability of not just having to, especially those 2 years when the winter storm, COVID and so forth, and really having to be able to sync together, not just the red tape, bureaucratical process sometimes, especially that is required at the board level, some of the restrictions and the multiple different bosses and the outcomes that they desire from what they're putting in and what they're funding, but also the needs of the community. So being able, I believe, serving on this board, that experience, to be able to bring that to the table, to be able to bring an ability to have a dialogue with some of the key leaders in this space from the other experiences, the other roles, the other impacts that I've had in the community, and hopefully also to be able to speak to the community, the residents that the Sobering Center operates in with the outcomes that I have had with them, hopefully be able to get some additional insights that we may not be receiving right now, to be able to bring those to the table as well when we're planning and strategizing.
Thank you. And what is your vision for the Sobering Center Board, and what initiatives would you suggest the board participate in over the next 5 years to realize that vision? How do relationships with law enforcement, the medical community, and the recovery community factor into these initiatives?
For me, communication is always the big go-to. 90% of your successes and failures is based off of communication. I mean, for me, outside of, again, Craig Moore, outside of notifications through the Travis County, I haven't really seen through my other just usual vacations anything from the Sobering Center. So I'd want to figure out, one, how we can just better market, inform, how we can make sure, whether it's through like I know for the veterans space, they have crisis matrices and so forth. How are we truly tied into, connected into those entities so that we're able to be able to get that assistance as soon as someone's identified that is the root cause of the situation? I'm just personally not really seeing a lot of that information. And so I know some cities are APDs, MPD from Manor Police Department, they know about the resource, but our elected officials don't know about it. or from the city, from the school district. The community doesn't necessarily really know about it. So how can we really enhance a lot of that and make sure these tax dollars are really truly being maximized?
Commissioner,
Yes.
if I can interject the same
Okay.
question, so we ask everybody
Sure.
the same thing. We get a lot of ideas from a number of folks. Sometimes folks with lived experience, sometimes folks who have been professionals in the field. So we get a lot of ideas. What process do you use? What should we consider as we talk about going from idea to something that can be implemented in a government setting? If I'm being clear, just how do you take an idea and operationalize it so that you can take that to policymakers and say, this is a best practice, this is where I've seen it, this is what it does, this is the personnel that you need to implement it?
Really, I think it's that holistic approach, right? Where are the current policies in place? Where are the current practices in place, right? There's usually a lot of opposition if it's an innovative first-time thing being done. So what are the comparables? What are the correlating aspects of it to help be able to bridge along support for doing either a pilot or expensing additional funds to it? Where can it potentially be piloted at with a community that's supportive? So that you're able to start off on a good foot to get real tangible, true data to hopefully be able to take that back and potentially be able to scale it. So I think anything that's brought to, especially the board or to the executive director, again, it's how significantly, how much of that percentage of that idea, that what you want to call that dream of an outcome, how much of it is new and innovative, and then how much of that can you tie into best practices, experiences, outcomes, and then those that you just can't connect to something that's already out there. What's the best way within legal parameters? Can you potentially be able to pilot something and see if it's going to be successful or not, and then build the resources, the personnel, the funding around that, because you've taken something that may be 75% of an idea that's never been experimented to prove it.
Thank you.
Thank you. What solutions would you explore with the board to increase the public's awareness of the Sobering Center as a vital resource within the community? How would you help the agency expand its fundraising outreach efforts to ensure long-term financial viability?
One thing I've really seen just through the last 3 years is a lot of processes and systems are reactive. Go to the website. You have to read it at the bottom of some document or so forth. It's handed out in flyers and spaces that individuals, they're not there to get the material. They're there to get their hair cut. They're there to just enjoy church or something, right? How do we do more PSAs, more visualizations? Commercials nowadays, they're 15 seconds, 30 seconds at max. So how are we tapping into that aspect of marketing right now that's very attentive? How are we tying into reaching the people through their ISP addresses? How are we utilizing Austin Public that can help push some things out? I'd really be looking at those ways of how can we, now I want to say modernize, but what are we doing? Is it too much of a trend that you usually see most of the time from governmental entities that could potentially be that disconnect from the community and how they receive information, especially if it's suburban or rural places? How are we making sure that we're reaching out to them the way they receive information?
And what do you think are the most pressing challenges facing the Sobering Center's ability to carry out their mission and meet the needs of the populations they serve?
Well, this is just going to be an assumption here, right? The assumption is going to be that because I have not seen that much in communication coming out, that there's potentially a greater capacity of individuals to be able to take care of within the community. And so I would say that the full utilization of the funding, the full utilization of the people that are working there is not being fully maximized. So therefore, there is quote unquote being some money left on the table where additional services, additional individuals could be taken care of.
And how would you help the agency expand its fundraising outreach efforts to ensure long-term financial abilities? And what solutions would you explore with the board to increase the public's awareness of the Sobering Center as a vital resource within the community?
Through my natural vocations, I mean, I'm always engaging with different communities, different advocacy groups within the Black and Brown population. So making sure that, again, that they're aware of the Sobering Center, listening and understanding what their needs are, hesitations and concerns may be, and making sure we're able to address them and show them that we are receiving that information, we are making those changes, so then they are more receptive to contributing, more receptive to inviting the Sobering Center into their different spaces of healthcare, health services, health settings, information sharing. So that way it's better receptive within the community and more willing to be donations from the community, just from grassroots, as well as engaging with larger organizations that give funding and give grants as well. I'm not sure if the Sobering Center is able to receive grants, but if it is, that would be another area of conversation to be able to have with entities that are operating and focusing within this area of social determinants.
Thank you. As a board member, how would you judge if the board is working effectively? And what metrics or conditions should the Commissioners Court look for that would demonstrate success by the board and the agency?
To look for success, because you're putting money in, right? How's the dollar being utilized? How's it being scaled to its max utilization, right? Is there waste occurring? That would probably be the number one thing. And just even looking back to the military, right? They save all the way at the beginning of the year, then want the same budget at the end of the year, so then they start buying a whole bunch of crazy stuff they really don't need, so they can be able to validate the need for the same large size of a budget. How much is it costing to be able to market just to one person? Are you marketing in the wrong place? The services and equipment. I mean, I would really be delving down into that to make sure taxpayer dollars are actually being maximized. As far as time wasted, I'd probably label that as far as is time being wasted by the board members. If you're coming in a meeting and it's more socializing versus the item, discussing it, figuring out how to streamline it, figuring out how to enhance it. I mean, if everything is not focused on enhancing and streamlining, then to me, we're not utilizing and we're not operating the way that a board should be able to do when it comes to, again, because of the funding mechanism for the Sobering Center, we're not trying to be astute to how we are maximizing taxpayer dollars.
And are you aware of the time commitment and fiduciary responsibilities expected of an appointed board member? And do you have any concerns about serving on the board?
No, I don't have any concerns regarding serving on the board or the time commitment required.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your interest in applying, and this was the last of the questions. And do you have any questions for the court?
Honestly, I guess what type of role capacity for this board member are you all looking for? And then I guess the other thing would be is what is the desired within, I'm not gonna say 30 days, but 60, 90 days kind of an impact would you be looking for with the new board members in place?
Well, I think we mostly leave that up to the board and the executive director to kind of direct what the agency is, where it's going and what it's doing to address its mission. And we haven't had a report from them lately, but we usually do get a report and as to the progress that they're making. And so, but we do kind of stay in communication with them I serve as a member, an ex officio member of the board to keep up with the financial condition of the agency. And so I think they're doing the very best they can with the amount of dollars that they get. And so to trying to address the mission of trying to divert people from the jail and then also from the emergency rooms. So that's really the big part of their job.
Right.
Commissioner?
Yes, sir.
Okay, the types of things that I look for in a board member are, number one, they have a community perspective, the community that they reside in and work in. They have relationships in the community. They understand some community priorities as it relates to the Sobering Center, how we educate them, how we make sure that they are aware of those programs. What you're telling us, what do we need to communicate to the areas that we don't necessarily communicate to all the time? Is there a willingness on the part of that board member to brief us periodically? This is what I see. These are some of the things that I'm doing. This is the type of assistance I could use. Or, when I was talking to a group, maybe these constituents are in precinct 1 and they want to see you and have you talk to them about what their issues are. To look at the strategic plan to see whether there are any gaps. To make recommendations based on their understanding of the community, to share that type of information not only with the board but periodically with the Commissioners Court as well. I believe that as we appoint board members, we are building a relationship that says, I trust that this is an area where you have some expertise. I trust that this is something that you genuinely care about. And if those things are true, how do we make sure that we are building the right partnerships? What do you see that we don't see? Because there are 12 to 15 boards and commissions that we function with, and we can't be as attentive as we'd like to be to every single one of them. So we want to make sure that we've got the relationship so that you feel, as a board member, that you can come and talk to us about things that are critical. What populations do you represent? Some people, it's a geographic location. For some people, it is an organization like the military. For other people, it is an organization like a civil rights organization. So how do we get more insight into priorities of the community and build an asset map so that we know who is where doing what and how we can partner with each other to make sure that we're providing the best service we can provide?
Thank you so much. Any other member of the court, any comments?
Thanks for your time today.
Thank
Larry.
you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Larry. Good to see you.
Yes, sir.
I almost got blinded by all those medals in there. Huh?